All right, guys, how's it going? I haven't made a video covering any of these updates, so today I'm going to talk about a couple, right? One, just know that William Wallace has been out for a few weeks, just some thoughts about him, where infantry is, what's a good invest, some general strategies there. I want to cover this Poised for Battle update that's scheduled to be released in 3 days. I think it's supposed to come out on August 22nd. And also, finally, we're going to talk about a little bit about this new Archer commander. There's not too much information about him or her, and it's actually just the garrison, right? So we haven't even seen the open field one, but from here, just some general thoughts. All right, so first let's actually start out going over these updates. I'm not going to cover every part of it. Some of it I'll just give the general impression. So right now there's a new Delta formation that's supposed to come out. It's for combo attack. So Lucha's expertise, essentially 25% chance to get a basic attack. They've renamed that to combo attack now. And then this new formation specifically is meant to actually really enhance the combo attack. Right now, with just Lucha, I would take the Arch formation over a new the Delta formation, right? In the future, maybe there's more commanders with combo attack when they make it worth it, but 10% more damage to the combo attack, and you have a 25% chance to trigger that. The percentage just isn't high enough, whereas like when you get Arch, essentially your white damage is going to get 5% more damage, your smite damage is going to get 5% more damage. I just think it's a lot more relevant right now, right? So this is maybe something in the future, but right now it's not that good. The new armament system is the one I'm really looking forward to. So what's really cool now is once this patch comes out, you can actually pre-select which spot you want the special inscription to go to. So for example, the big one that everyone wants is like Intrepid, right, for Wedge. I think it's on the emblem, you get 10% more boost to skill damage. Now you can actually set it so, you know, in the small percent chance that you do get a special inscription, when it does come out, you'll actually get an Intrepid for Wedge, which would be awesome. The other one is that there's a special inscription guarantee. So apparently this mechanism has already been in the game, right, where if you get 9 rare inscriptions without a special, then on the 10th one you're guaranteed a special. But now they're actually going to give a progress tracker, so you know exactly where you're at. I can't remember how many of Wedge I've actually recycled rare inscriptions. Some of them just aren't that good. For example, I don't think Defiant is like that good. I have enough that are better now that it doesn't actually make sense for me to keep it around. And you know, when I talk about armaments, I'm not big on hoarding, so I actually have recycled a few of those. Hopefully I actually have enough to get a special, and I can select where I want that to go, right? And we should get this in time, actually before Zone 7 opens, so that should be really exciting. And then they do talk about sometime after the update, if you have gotten a special. So for example, you got a special, but you pulled it as a hunter or a balance, right? You can actually convert it into something else. So that's kind of cool, I guess, for the people that got it. I haven't gotten one at all from a natural pull, so it doesn't really apply to me. All this other stuff doesn't really matter that much. One down here did catch my eye. This a new siege order icon. So a huge complaint about Alliance Victus while I was watching the last KVK was that when you have cities that are off territory and in dot mode, you could be clicking way off the city and you could accidentally attack the cities, and people would just like sweep it by accident and take like 100k deads or something, right? Which is pretty crazy. So now they made it where it's very clear if you're targeting a stronghold or a building rather than another troop, and then hopefully you won't accidentally target a city when you don't want to anymore, because that was just a real problem. I saw a bunch of people complain about it in the Rise of Kingdoms content creator Discord, so it's good that they're actually addressing that. All right, and those are the two probably big or main things that I see from here. And from here, let's actually go into the new Archer, because that will actually tie back into some of the armament stuff I want to talk about, right? So I assume at this point you've all seen this new Archer release. I think this came out maybe like 3 days ago. So Archer Garrison Defense, no surprise, because we were expecting the next MGE Archer Commander to be a Garrison Commander. So that's been confirmed, right? And then the big thing everyone is talking about is this thing called true damage, right? So all this other stuff, without knowing the actual stats, you can't really tell how good the commander is. But something new is, one, there is a mighty heal, right? So I just assume mighty heal is something that can stack with regular healing, kind of like a mighty shield can stack concurrently with regular shielding. But we don't, without knowing what the number is, like we can't tell how good it is, right? Because this mighty heal could be like 9,000, or all of a sudden it's like broken good. If it's 1,000, then a bunch of people are going to complain. But the thing that's probably a little bit more eye-catching is this true damage. So let me just read this number 2 description here. True damage is not affected by damage bonuses. So for example, in smite damage, it's impacted by normal damage bonus. Skill damage, right? We have YSG, you have Nevsky, you have all these commanders that can increase skill damage. True damage isn't affected by any of that, right? Also, it's not affected by the attacking troops attack attribute or the defending troops defense attribute. So in a way, what it's saying is just there's just going to be X amount of damage, and when you launch your active skill, your stats, any kind of damage mitigation or any kind of damage increase doesn't affect the amount of damage you dealt. So I've seen some like mixed reviews. Most people say it's really, really good. It's actually really hard to tell, right? Because if you just look in the game right now, for example, on the archer and the cavalry side, there's lots of ways to dramatically increase your skill damage dealt. And then also inherently in almost every tree, there's some form of like skill damage mitigation. And then also a lot of commanders kits, right? Reduce, for example, like skill damage taken by like 20% or something. I forgot what Luch's is exactly. I think it's like 10 or 20%, which is actually pretty good built into a kit, right? So what the true damage is saying is it's just taking all that out, including the stats, and they're actually just going to take, you're going to deal a percentage of whatever the, I guess the healing factor is for this commander. You're going to deal a percentage of that as true damage whenever you launch your active skill, right? So first thoughts on it is that it's probably not going to be that much damage, because if you just look at the amount of skill damage increase versus the amount of skill damage mitigation that's out there, for archers and cavalry, you're going to be able to increase skill damage a lot more than natural skill damage mitigation out there. So right now, if you're taking away skill damage mitigation and skill damage increase, and you're not using attack to factor into the attack, how much damage is dealt, and then or the troops' defensive attributes, and it's just that flat damage, I think it's going to actually be lower than what we're used to, right? So I think a good example of that is if you look at the Guan Scipio March, the kit looks really good, right? It should be really good, but now it's actually feeling like it's a little bit lacking. It's not as strong as it used to, because since Scipio came out, a lot more commanders came out. For example, like ZL, like Herman, right? Even Ashurbanipal, like Wokubin, right? All these commanders can dramatically increase the skill damage dealt. Whereas if you look at Scipio's kit, his expertise, you just get 10% more skill damage increase. And then Guan, who's an even older commander, when he has a shield for the next 3 seconds, you get a 15% skill damage increase. So even if you're lucky at most, you can increase the skill damage by 25%, right? Whereas like if you just take YSG by himself right now, with a triple relic, he can actually increase skill damage by like 62%, right? So when you're taking all of that out, plus the attack and defensive stats, and you're just doing a true damage, my feeling is it's just going to be like, for example, if you stack something like Henry with Boudica, right? They're both like 2,300 skill damage, but because neither of those commanders have a skill damage increase, if you try to run that march on the field, it's kind of tanky. It'll do okay, but it's just not really keeping up with the latest and greatest marches anymore. So my first thought is true damage isn't going to be that good. Okay, now the rest of this, because we don't know the stats, and honestly, I'm not that excited about talking about a garrison commander anyways. We're not going to cover it, but it kind of leads me to my point talking about armaments. Okay, so I think since the armament system came into play, for the most part, we've been told to go wedge, right? Because 5% skill damage, you're going to get the biggest bonus. I think for me personally, over the last 2 or 3 months or so, when I have been mentoring people, especially for a newer account, I actually tell them to just pull arch instead of wedge, right? So if you just look quickly at the arch formation, right? Arch formation, you deal 5% more normal damage. So normal damage is basic attack and counter attack, right? So for every turn, if you are attacking someone else and they're there, right, you're going to deal a basic attack. They're going to deal a counter attack back to you. Then they're going to deal a basic attack to you, and you're going to do a counter attack back to them. So when you add the basic attack, which is 200 damage factor approximately, and then the counter attack approximately 200 damage factor, in total it's going to be 400 damage factor, right? Now, the way I like to think about this is, okay, so you're just, because there's a lot of different scenarios, right? You could be getting swarmed, which is a whole different story. But if you're just doing like a one-on-one, over 8 turns, right, or 400 damage factor over 8 turns, that's going to be 3,200 damage factor, and then you get 5% more normal damage on top of that, right? If you're thinking about a commander firing an active skill, usually when they launch their first active skill, unless it's like Bane or something where you have a rage reduction, they're usually going to launch their first active skill on turn 8. Then there's going to be a second of downtime, which would be turn 9, and then turn 10, the secondary commander is going to launch an active skill, right? So if it's 10 turns, 400 damage factor per turn for the white damage, then you're actually talking about a 4,000 damage factor, right, over 10 turns, and you're increasing that by 5%. So the benefit of this is even if it's 1 or 2 turns, right, you're still going to benefit from this. Whereas if it's a wedge damage, right, so we go to wedge, you get 5% more skill damage only when you're actually launching a skill damage, like an active skill usually, right, or an instant proc. You're not going to benefit from this, right? So potentially turn 1 through 7, you don't get anything, and then on turn 8, when you launch an active skill, you get that bonus. So for the arch, in 10 turns, you're almost guaranteed to get the 5% for 4,000 damage factor. For the wedge, you're not right now. But if you're talking about once you launch an active skill, that should swing towards the skill damage commander's favor, right? So for example, let's just say you have ZL and Herman. Okay, so if it's both hitting 1 March, so ZL's active skill is 22. Wait, where's ZL? Here we go. Okay, ZL's active skill does 2,000 damage factor, right? And then Herman also does 2,000. So in 10 turns, if ZL is a primary commander, you're launching that on turn 8. 1 second of downtime, 10 turns. The 10th turn, Herman's launching an active skill, and you're hitting 1 target. Essentially, what the wedge damage is increasing for damage is going to be what the arch is increasing, right? If you're hitting 1 target with ZL Herman. Now, if you're hitting, for example, 5 targets with ZL, right? Every extra target you hit, you're going to be doing 15% less. Now, the way the game mechanics work, on the 5th target, it actually doesn't go down. So essentially, when you're hitting 5 targets, whatever your active skill is, take that divided by 2, right? So 1,000, it's going to be a 1,000 damage factor to 5 targets. So if you're hitting 5 targets of ZL, right, instead of doing 2,000 damage factor to 1 target, you're actually going to be doing 1,000 damage factor to 5 targets, or 5,000 total. And then for Herman, because he only has a 3 target AoE, right? If you're hitting 2 targets, it'll be down to 1,700. If you're hitting 3 targets, it'll be 1,400 to 3 targets. So this will actually be 4,200, right? 1,400 times 3 is 4,200. 1,000 times 5 is going to be 5,000. So in total, it's going to be 9,200. And then you're going to get a 5% increase for that 9,200 over 10 turns, right? That's going to be a little more than 2 times as much as the benefit you're going to get from Arch. So obviously for a skill damage commander, especially for AoE commander like this, skill damage or the wedge is going to be better. But with the introduction of Lucia and Spite damage, where essentially at least one infantry march largely doesn't benefit from wedge at all, it became more and more, it started making more and more sense to start using Arch, right? Because before the idea was, okay, all active skills use skill damage. If you do wedge, right, then you're going to get the biggest improvement. But now if you have one march that basically doesn't really benefit from wedge anyways, which is whatever the march Lucia is going to be, right? If you are using William Wallace, then that definitely doesn't benefit at all. If you're actually splitting up Lucia and William Wallace, then only like 1/2 of the march is going to benefit. Right now, you're not really looking to split it up, but it looks more and more likely that infantry is going to just go towards smite damage regardless. So at some point, you're going to have a whole troop type that doesn't use skill damage, then wedge becomes useless, right? Whereas if you pick if you pick Arch, which gives normal attack damage, it's still going to apply to all your marches because they're all still going to do white damage, right? They're also going to do a basic attack and counter attack. It started making it make a lot more sense to actually invest in Arch over wedge. Now, with the introduction of true damage, right? If you look at this, if true damage is not affected by damage bonuses, right? And really true damage right here is talking about an active skill, then all of a sudden Wedge doesn't benefit true damage at all, right? Let's just say this new open field archer comes out, he or she is pretty good, and he or she is a true damage commander. Now all of a sudden, the Wedge doesn't really benefit the new archer commander either, and it makes it make more sense to actually go to arch formation. So I've actually been suggesting, especially when I'm mentoring younger players, to just start pulling for arch. Not that arch is the best for every situation, but like especially when you're first starting out, you just want to be able to pull one armament type and have it apply to all your troops. Arch actually has become a little bit more future-proof than Wedge in my opinion. Although for even Archer or like Cavalry right now, Archer especially is probably going to be, Wedge is going to be better, and then Cavalry, Wedge will probably be slightly better, and then for Infantry it's going to be worse. In the future, I could see a scenario where if you just pull Wedge for everything, maybe it's not going to be the best, but at least you could have a set that applies to every troop type. And then if you want to branch out to different formations from there, that'll actually be the better way to go, right? Just spitballing there. We don't even know if the other archer is going to be true damage, but at least you can see they're starting to throw new things in here that makes Wedge like less obvious as just what you're going to pull all the time. Okay. Finally, let's actually talk about infantry. Okay, so now that William Wallace has been out for a while, I'm pretty confident in saying that if you're just talking about Lucha pairings, I still think Lucha Alex is the best. Scipio Lucha is probably second, and then Lucha William Wallace is running third. And this is for a couple of reasons. If you just look at the kit of William Wallace, right, it doesn't, his only quote unquote utility would be if he's primary, and then you could potentially do that rage reduction like debuff, which I already made the case where I don't think it's that powerful for open field. But other than that, right, his expertise, you could get a shield, which would benefit everyone else. Everything else is just straight up like how this March trades on the field. And I've seen enough reports now compiled with a reports manager to know that like if you're talking about just pure trades, Lucha Alex probably does the best with Scipio Lucha a close second. And then Lucha William Wallace actually trades better than William Wallace Lucha. Lucha Primary actually trades better, but that's running third, right? And it's not bad, it's still really good, but when there's two pairings that are better, then right now, like William Wallace doesn't make too much sense. If you're investing for the future though, it would be a little bit different, right? Because like if you think about in the future, for sure Lucha is going to be part of the best March and for the top two marches, right? But I can actually make a case where every other commander from Alex to William Wallace to Scipio, right? Like where Guan, where they could actually be bumped off, right? So right now, for example, let's just say we come around again to the next infantry cycle and a new, really good smite damage commander comes out that pairs really well with Luchet, right? Then you're going to pair that new smite damage commander with Luchet. And then if you're going to run a second infantry march, what are you going to run? Your options would be Scipio, right, with William Wallace, Guan, or Alex. And out of those three, honestly, the second best march will probably be Guan with a relic. Maybe at that point, he'll have two relics with Scipio, right? Let's just say a new smite damage commander comes out and he actually pairs pretty well with William Wallace, right? Now you can run Lucha Alex, and then you can run the new smite damage commander with William Wallace, and then does Scipio go on the bench, right? But even if he pairs really well with William Wallace, because how good Scipio's kit is, even if the William Wallace with the new smite damage commander pairing is better, I don't think he'll be that much better than Scipio with the new smite damage commander, where I would actually still probably be willing to invest in Scipio right now over William Wallace. Right now, Guan is really obvious. Guan, if he's not going to be pairing with Scipio, then he's out, right? So there's some kind of combination where the new smite damage commander comes out and he actually just is better with Scipio than Guan's gone, right? So out of all these commanders, obviously the safest one is Lucha. I still think the second safest is Scipio, right? I personally like the Lucha Alex March over Scipio Lucha, but if I don't have any commanders right now and I'm going to KVK 3, I definitely would skip the cabs, the cab wheel, just because Lucha is so good, so much better than any cav commander right now. And then I would actually pair Lucha with Scipio, even though I do think Alex is better. And the reason why I would pair him with Scipio is because uh, even though I think Alex is better, the Scipio March is not that far behind at all, if any. Some will argue that he's better. And then for the future, when you're looking to future-proof this, you're having more versatility in the future. It's way, way more likely that Scipio will survive than William Wallace or Alex or Guan, right? So that's why I would go that route. Even though if you're just talking about right now, right, you can make a case, hey, you know what? Since Alex is so good, you should invest in Alex. But if Alex wasn't with Luce, then he would be back to what he was before, which is the aging commander that people had written off, right? But for some reason, Alex's kit pairs really well with Luce, and you're just not guaranteed to get that again when the next infantry cycle comes out. So if I had to get to KVK 3 right now, I would definitely skip Cavs and actually max Luce first, right? If I've been saving up my gold heads, and I would actually invest in Scipio as opposed to Alex or William Wallace for that reason. If I was going to go 2 infantry marches right now, and I had all the infantry commanders available, it would be Luce, Alex, and Guan Skip, right? But if I didn't have any and I had to actually get to KVK 3 and then build my 2 infantry marches, I actually would do infantry last, just because there's too much unknowns there, right? Like the only real known is that you probably want to keep Luce and Scipio, and then depending on what happens with the next infantry commander, you could actually go a bunch of different ways. So if I could hold off on investing in a second infantry march, and I don't have it right now, I would actually do that, okay? I went a couple different routes, talking about a bunch of different things. It's just almost like a brain dump. You know, obviously, you guys see, normally I have like a Canva or like a presentation where I'm going like bullet point by bullet point. I decided not to do that this time. So, you know, hopefully you guys at least got something out of it, enjoyed it, you know, killed about like 22 minutes of your time. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. Just engagement also gets the video out into the algorithms. And then the next, I don't know if it's gonna be a video or stream, but the next video / stream I make probably will be after when this new pity armament system comes out. Hopefully I get a special inscription. I can start messing around with that. And actually, wait, I forgot one last thing. It's pretty clear to me now that the armament strategy, if you were going to take an armament strategy, is that you want to base it off of the inscriptions first, right? There was a time, like not even that long ago, where epic armaments were viable and epic armaments from inscription were viable. Now that's pretty much gone, right? Part of the reason was just because they made it way easier to get a lot more armaments, so you could get a lot more transmutation stones, and then because you have more of an ability to reroll armaments, all of a sudden legendary armaments from inscription just are so much better than epic armaments. But having said that, I think what you should base your armaments off of now is actually the inscriptions, right? The order obviously is always going to be the best, is going to be the special inscription. I don't think even any kind of double inscription will come close to a special. I actually think double inscriptions have a higher upside than the rares, right? Some of these rares are pretty good. For example, Forceful, 3% boost to normal damage dealt is pretty good. But if you have something like, say this, right? So assertive, you're doing 2% more all damage on the map, and you get another 3.5 attack. I would take this over Forceful, you know, just personally, because you're already getting 2% more all damage, which is actually a little better than the Forceful, but also you add another 3.5 attack. I think it puts it over the top over Forceful, right? So this general strategy, in my opinion, is you want to just go for legendaries with a good inscription. Now, if you're getting something like a single inscription, let me pull it up. Let's just say you have something that's like a War Hunger. If you are spending some on armaments and you can afford to reroll it just to get it to a decent place, go for it. If not, at least you have the inscription in each slot. And I would actually save my transmutation stones until I get, say, a good rare. But more specifically, ideally, you could get a really good double or special inscription before you start rolling the transmutation stones. So basically, prioritize inscriptions, If you want, maybe just don't lock any, and you could roll a few times just to get like 1 or 2 relevant stats for you. But I actually wouldn't put too much into regular inscriptions at this point. So for example, I have this War Hunger, right? 1.5% normal damage for Arch Formation, which is really good, right? But if I roll this out here and something comes wrong where I get, for example, a Forceful, or not Forceful, whatever the rare is for this slot, or just like a double that's better, right? I'm gonna abandon this and everything I invested into it and actually move on to the double, right? So rather than doing that now, unless you're pretty good at getting ahead in Transmutation Stones, if Transmutation Stones are a lot more of a limiting factor for you, I just would actually just go for the inscription. Maybe don't lock anything, so you could use like 5 Transmutation Stone, take 5 shots, get 1, hopefully 2 stats, right? And then just wait for something better inscription wise, right? Because if you could get at least an inscription on every slot, or double, even better, right? Or a special, then you know that's going to be like the final like end game armament you're going to use. Then it's worth it to actually use the transmutation crystals and use the transmutation stones. Now, if you're starting out, right, you have bigger room for improvement. Maybe you could be a little bit more aggressive. But once you get further along and most of your armaments are set, it's really not worth it to waste like 30 transmutation stones to lock like 2 stats to maybe get like a 1.5% increase if the inscription isn't good enough. Okay, so where I think the game is heading, especially now that you could actually select the slot you want for the special inscriptions, you get a pity system where you can select the slot you want. If you actually pulled a special before, you could actually pick the slot you want. These like regular inscriptions have become a lot less future proof, if you will, just because there's more ways to actually upgrade over it. And once you upgrade the inscription over it, all the stuff that you wasted in there before becomes that all the investment you put into that before from transmutation stones and crystals actually become a waste, right? Because you could potentially just get an inscription that's better, and this one goes on the bench. So I would actually be very careful using the transmutation stones and prioritize inscriptions first. So only really start using a lot of the resources on inscriptions that you feel like are going to last you a long time, that you're not going to replace. All right, so thought this was going to be a 10-minute video. Ended up being a 27-minute video. Again, if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. Thank you guys for watching. I'll talk to you guys next time.